Hello everybody, greetings. This is Dexter Kendrick and I'd like to welcome you all back to Heavenly Body TV right here on the Dexter Kendrick Soul channel on YouTube. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Dexter Kendrick Soul channel on YouTube, Dexter Kendrick Soul on Facebook, and Dexter Kendrick Soul on Instagram for updates on relevant astrological conversations and everything that's going on in the universe right here as the world turns. Please also know that I also do individualized horoscope and psychic medium readings. You can DM me on Instagram or you can message me on Facebook at Dexter Kendrick Soul. Drop me a comment here on YouTube. I'd be happy to chat with you and schedule an individualized reading. I do these horoscopes so that we can derive significant meaning from the movements that are our lives. Today we're going to be talking about Mars' recent movement in Libra, which took place on November 12th, which I believe was Wednesday of this week. And what that means, we're going to be talking about what Mars means in the horoscope, what Mars is going to mean certainly in Libra for us, how long Mars is going to be there, and just what kind of drama is going on in our lives. Have you ever had a time in your life where you were just itching for a fight? Have you ever had a time in your life where you were just itching to have some back and forth banter? Not with very little regard with who would win, but just wanting some response. Have you ever been in a back and forth text message battle with somebody because you wanted to get your point across and they didn't respond? How did you feel when that didn't happen, when you didn't get any back and forth challenge? Well, that's kind of the essence of Mars. Mars, mythologically, was born from just his mother, Hera, who was the wife of Zeus, king of the gods, and she gave birth to him on her own out of anger and out of revenge because Jupiter, or Zeus, went on his own and gave birth to his own daughter, Athene. And she felt some kind of way about that because she was the goddess of marriage and the home. And she was taking care of home and, taking care of her wifely duties. She's also the patron goddess of wives. And he was always out doing his own thing, very little regard for home and wifery, etc. Nonetheless, so Mars was born out of anger. And of course, I've said before, previously in other videos, that Jupiter really hated Mars because he was not his progeny. Jupiter did not give birth to Mars, and yet Mars was a part of his lineage. Nonetheless, what Mars represented, the power that Mars represented, was the strength that we get when we are faced with certain sudden challenges. When we are faced with sudden challenges, how many of us have gone through a period of time where we had to roll up our sleeves and make something happen, and we didn't know where the strength was going to come from, but somehow we pushed through it. We got through it. Mars was in mythology said to be invincible in battle. He lost a lot of battles because he wasn't really concerned with whether he won or lost. He was concerned with the development of courage and making sure that if a battle was there to be fought, that he was in it. So he was in it to win it. And in fact, he didn't even care if he won. He was just in it. And so that's kind of the energy that comes with Mars. And of course, like I always say, that the planets are the driving force in the horoscope. And so we talk about the psychological process of Mars, how we are as individuals, how we go about getting what we want in life with very little regard for other people. Mars is an antisocial kind of a character. Mythologically, he was seen to be this 300-foot tall brute who was only out for self, was out for blood, was not concerned with anybody else's viewpoints, and he failed a lot, and he was kind of a doofus, but he had strength and power. And what the interesting thing was is that as long as he was fighting someone head on, as long as everybody was fighting honorably and truthfully and being head on, he was able to surmount that and win those battles. He was able to go into a berserker rage and blindly win just out of sheer force and will. But the only time that he was able to be defeated is A, if somebody stabbed him in the back, came up from behind him, or used some kind of subversive or sneaky tactic, or B, whenever he was taunted and overturned by pleasure. So one of the goddesses the pantheon was actually his, let's see, Venus. Yeah, was actually his aunt Venus. She actually was also his lover. She was able to, through sexual interaction, overcome him. And so Mars can be tamed through pleasure. And so let's talk about pleasure for a little bit, because right now Mars is in its opposite sign of Libra. Mars historically is associated with the sign of Aries, which is the first sign, the sign that represents the bursting forth of life. The first day that the sun is in Aries is the first day of spring here on the earth. And so we can understand this bursting forth of creativity, new life, and development of self and self-esteem. And here I am, take it or leave it. But in Libra, partnership-oriented Libra, we've talked about how the signs are how the planets will express themselves. It's the clothing that the planets wear. Planets, of course, representing our certain psychological processes. Mars representing how we go about getting what we want. And Libra is actually an other-oriented kind of a sign, meaning Libra is the sign of partnerships in marriage, what we do for other people, what we do when we come into contact with other people, the conflicts that we have with other people, the people that we don't like, open enemies, people that we're in competition with, people that we're in business competition with in a friendly way, and people that we just despise in an openly, I don't like that person kind of a way. And so when Mars is in this place, because Venus rules charm, it rules beauty. Some of you are already beginning to get into this conversation of these key words surrounding the psychological processes regarding the energies. Venus represents charm and fashion and beauty and tastefulness and magnetism and those things such as flattery, things that we do in order to get what we want. But Mars is a brute. If we look at Mars, he's 300-foot-pound brute who's out for his own objective with very little care about how other people see him. But that's not the essence of Libra. So we have to take Mars, right, this 300-pound doofus who is all muscular and brawn, and we have to put him in a suit. Because in Libra, and he's very uncomfortable in Libra, he's actually said to be in his fall in Libra. He's actually most comfortable in Aries and most powerful in Capricorn, which we'll talk about in a couple months when he moves signs. But in Libra, he's kind of uncomfortable because he has to behave and talk in a way that doesn't really say, I'm mad as hell, and this is how I feel about it. He actually has to turn his words right now. We're going to have to be a little bit more civilized in our communication with other people. So from November 12th until January 3rd, we're all going to be visited by Mars in Libra in a way where people will challenge us to express ourselves while going after what we want, and how we express our individuality when somebody crosses the line of what we view to be important. Venus also represents what's valuable, values. That's a conversation that more so comes up when Venus is in Taurus, but Venus also represents values. So in Libra, it's going to represent our values in our relationships. So what do we value as important in our relationships? Mars is going to show us what we view as important when other people begin to trigger things that we view to be offensive. Mars is the god of war. And so when Mars is in Libra, this is essentially an essence of the honeymoon being over. How so? When we first get to know somebody, when we first get to view somebody as being beautiful, and we have this ideal of where our relationships can go, business and personal wise, we begin to see them through a lens. And that is usually the essence of Venus, which is this person is making me feel really good, bodily wise, if we're talking about Taurus, or intellectually. I feel so great about where this can go. This is the ideal relationship that I've always had in mind. And Neptune as well. We don't see any flaws in people when we're first getting to know them because that's not the ideal. They're beginning to fit into a mold that we have set in our mind's eye or our imagination, and it's perfect in every way. But what happens when Mars comes to town is essentially when you have your first fight. The honeymoon is over. Because each individual says, well, actually, this is where I stand on this matter, this subject. And the other party says, well, actually, this is where I stand on this subject. And then the relationship is forever changed. It doesn't mean that the relationship is over, but it does mean that at this time we have to fight for or honor or acknowledge. We don't always have to fight, but we are itching to be able to express and communicate our viewpoint. That is the essence of Mars in Libra, where I'm coming from. That's the essence of Mars in Libra from November 12th until January 3rd. I need you to know where I'm coming from. It might be an uncomfortable conversation. I'll try to make it as pleasant as possible, but I have some things that I need to get off my chest. Like I said, Libra is the energy of confrontation. And because Venus is always most concerned about doing what we can to hold on to whatever harmony we can salvage, Mars doesn't give a damn. But Mars in Libra will be challenged to do what he can to try and wear that suit and be as polite as possible while giving you the middle finger and saying, this is where I stand, take it or leave it. So we kind of have to get that imagery in mind. There'll be a couple key points that are coming up through this period of time until January 3rd while Mars is in Libra. Some key points I want to point out. There is a week of December 6th through December 10th, which is going to be a pretty intense week for most of us. Mars will be doing a square off with his uncle Pluto from the underworld. If you remember, you can revisit my conversation on Pluto and Capricorn. We talked about how Pluto represents our blind rage, things that are occurring beneath the surface. The underworld is actually seen as being beneath the surface, the core of the earth. And when those emotions begin to get triggered and they begin to erupt, we can expect that some relationship conversation will have some energy that triggers some old wound. It may be a lover from months or even years past. It may be a new person that's in our life or some relationship on a business or personal level that all of a sudden triggers and brings up some kind of feelings of victimization and begins to trigger Mars. Well, Mars is going to be triggering Pluto. They're going to trigger each other, and some kind of irreconcilable rift will have to be dealt with. Now, the key with Pluto is these are unconscious energies and emotions that we don't deal with often. So when they come up, they're very raw and they're very potent. And Mars has a tendency to want to go off half-cocked and just blow up because Mars is the god of war. He's out for blood. But in Libra, hopefully we'll be able to channel that through Venus's essence of charm and rationality, right? Because Libra is always concerned with keeping balance, not tipping the scales too far one way or another. So if we begin to lose it a little bit during that period, Pluto represents fire. Pluto lived in hell. He was responsible for what happened with souls when they left this earth in Greek mythology. So we'll be faced with that. But also the same week, while we might be faced with some irreconcilable differences in our relationships with other people, we're also going to be faced with a challenging aspect between Mars and Uranus, and this is on December 10th. And Uranus was the sky god, so he represented the ideal. The ideal. And while Uranus is currently transiting through Aries, which is the sign of the self, where we have an ideal about ourselves and where we would like to go. And the different changes that Uranus brings, Uranus is responsible for sudden change, sudden insight, etc. The different changes that Uranus is attempting to bring, the different newness that we're attempting to give birth to during this period of time, the first week of December, it looks like it might meet some opposition from other people. So we may be challenged to shift gears that are in an unexpected way. We're likely to be challenged to shift gears in an unexpected way, much like what I spoke about in my last post when we were discussing the new moon that was in Libra. It was the same aspect. We were visited by this same aspect, this square to Pluto, irreconcilable differences, and this opposition to Uranus, which means challenges from other people. And so during that week, we'll be able to see in a longer sense, because this energy is going to last a little longer. Now, the new moon only lasted about 2 weeks. Mars stays in each sign for about 7 to 8 weeks. So you'll see that when it begins to trigger this, the first week in December, we're going to be dealing with these energies for a minute. And we're going to be sitting in it. We're going to be stewing in it. And it's our opportunity to begin to transform it. Because what Mars is interested in is only making sure that nobody is infringing upon our ability to do what we're here to do. and that nobody is trying to love us too much and smother out our individuality for our own sake. So all it is a conversation around boundaries. In Chinese medicine, we associate Aries and the springtime with the element of wood. And you know that a vine that needs to grow and break through new ground has to have tremendous self-esteem and power to break out of that hard seed of a shell and push through soil, fight off its brothers and sisters, sometimes even fight off its mother if they're sharing the same pot, for those of us who have a green thumb, and make its way to sunlight and water so it can survive. And so what is going to be triggered the first week in December are our survival instincts. We're going to have to take a look at that. Thankfully, hopefully, we'll be able to make peace with Libra, even though Mars is extremely uncomfortable. Mars is extremely uncomfortable in Libra, and he's also extremely uncomfortable in Cancer, which is very sensitive and caring about other people. Mars is not concerned or interested in any of that. That is not the essence of how Mars was born. When Hera or Juno gave birth to Mars, she didn't give a damn about Jupiter. In fact, it was a spiteful birth that she did. And she was saying, I'm also an individual. You're out here sleeping with everybody, and I'm going to take care of me. I want a child. I want to show you that I recognize where I stand and what I can do. And so what's going to be happening over this period, we're going to be claiming our individuality, and we're going to be coming into contact with other people, and we're going to have to say, I'm sorry, you may not get it. You may not see my point of view, but you're going to hear what I have to say. And we might be itching for a little bit more of a fight than we actually need, so we might have to rein that in a little bit because it actually can undo us. Mars had a tendency to go into battle half-cocked, and he did not win every battle that he entered into. He certainly had the courage to dust himself off and fight another day, but we might be able to avoid some unnecessary blunders. Remember this 300-pound big oaf and brute, who still lost a good number of battles. But the key point here is that we're going to be searching for our individuality and self. We're going to be seeking to claim that, and we're going to hopefully be able to salvage and maintain our relationships in the process. Venus is always concerned about maintaining some level of harmony, even if we can agree to disagree. So until next time, my beloveds, please be blessed. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Dexter Kendrick Soul channel. Mars and Libra might be uncomfortable, but it's doable. Get ready to put on your suit and your suit and tie, your watch, and begin to show people where you stand. I mean, that's really the essence of this transit. I'll be coming back in a week's time to update you on some other movements coming down the pipe for you. I'm also available via private practice for astrology, conversations of a personal nature, and psychic medium readings. Thank you so much. Take care.